Chapter 7. The Cat's Tale. Tibbet was suspicious by nature, but he was also treacherous. Ever since he had laughed at Reynard from the top of the festival cross, the wild cat managed to remain carefully out of the fox's way, but the passage of time relaxed his vigilance. The old cat also knew that all roads cut across each other, and that animals on the hunt happened to meet each other more easily than mountains. Therefore he was hardly surprised when, one evening near Ascension Tide, he found himself face to face with the redcoat in one of the forest rides. He spat, jumped to one side, but immediately collected himself.
"I didn't see you, Reynard. Forgive me."
"For what, my friend?" said Reynard. "By my tail, I'm delighted to see you. Did you suffer from the long winter? Have you been hurt or ill? Time seemed long away from you."
"I felt the same, my friend, as you know, but my heart followed you from afar and took delight in your exploits."
"My exploits?" said Reynard, half lowering his eyes. "What exploits?"
"The wolf's tail and the bear's tail," said Tibbet.
He licked the underside of his paws and waved his jointed tail round him from right to left.
"In Bruin's case," he said, "it was well done. There he is at least without a tail."
Then, in a smooth voice, his eyes flickering,
"But Eascream's tail is growing again," he said.
"What did you say?" said Reynard in spite of himself.
"It's growing again,"
Tibbet went on, more cheerful than if he had gulped down a whole jar of creamy milk.
"Yes, it's growing again, or rather the fur's growing. The wolf's tail was tough, Lord Reynard, or else the ice on the pool round it was not quite hard enough. When the Vavasor and his dogs were close to him, he was able to pull it out, causing himself great harm and suffering, it's true. It's cut down, bleeding, shorn and as miserable as a rat's tail. He was ashamed at first and only went out at night, but yesterday he appeared again, more arrogant and brutal than ever. Those who, like you, had believed that the wolf had lost his tail were convinced that he had found it again, bushy, proud, and waving on high like an upright plume."
"I'm delighted," the fox assured him. "If you see him before I do, tell him so."
"Eascream? The wolf?"
said Tibbet. "Tell my good uncle so," said Reynard. "I'm much changed, my friend. Peace, peace, peace with Eascream, with Bruin, and with you, my honest friend Tibbet. Was it my fault if Lanfert directed a blow with his heavy axe onto the bear's tail?"
Very well, interrupted Tibbet. "In nomine Patris, amen."
The old cat played the game, thinking all the time that he was the more clever. But from now on he was wide of the mark, for if Lord Reynard in his heart interpreted his words differently from the way his mouth pronounced them, the voice of the master rogue had spoken the truth. He was much changed. There was a silence between them, both of them still face to face in the pathway. They broke it together, asking each other in the same tone of voice,
"Where were you going?"
And both of them, still in unison, replied,
"To Constantinois."
This unison delighted them greatly. They were as companionable as choirmen in the monastery.
Let's go,
they said, still together. On the way they talked. Reynard was going to the farmer's to inspect his poultry run. A certain hen named Chippet attracted him in that direction for various reasons, but all of them equally decisive and too long to relate. As for Tibbet, he coveted Constant's milk. His thoughts were cool, unctuous, white and pure. They swore in advance to help each other, but where should they begin?
"With the milk,"
said the old cat. "With the hens," said the fox.
"The milk won't make a noise," said Tibbet.
"Neither will the hens," said Reynard. "I won't strangle a single one. This is only a reconnaissance."
"Of course not," said Tibbet. "But if they make a sound, even in their dreams, we'll have no milk and no hens."
"That's true," Reynard agreed. "Let's start with the milk, then." Night had fallen when they reached the village, with a new moon which shed a soft light over the long walls of the farm. Cat and Fox went along confidently, and without flinching they reached the same gap in the fence round the yard. Like true campaigners and bold cut-pursers, they even succeeded, against their will, in admiring each other. "This way," said Reynard, for a smell of warm feathers began to tickle his nostrils.
"This way,"
said Tibbet, pointing to a skylight open below the low, sloping roof. He jumped up, and Reynard followed him. A pallid moonbeam filtered through the window and shone on the side of a polished corn bin. There was an odour of caked sourness here, and the stale smell of farm men, sleeping in their feather beds, drifted under the door.
"Where's the milk?"
whispered Reynard.
"In the bin."
"It's a heavy one," said Reynard. "It will need at least 2 of us to lift such a heavy lid. And how shall we drink it?"
"One after the other," said Tibbet, "each one in turn, holding the lid open."
"You have the honour," said Reynard.
"To drink the milk?"
said the old cat. "That is what I meant," said Reynard. He had seen, while appraising the lid, which was as thick and broad as a church flagstone, that it was bound with iron. He braced his muscles in advance, and filled his deep chest with air. As for Tibbet, he was thinking of nothing except the milk. At first everything went as they had hoped. Both men and animals, in the house and the stables, were sleeping their first sleep. There was no rustle of footsteps on straw, not a sigh. Tibbet was already lapping the milk from the jug, standing half inside the bin, which Reynard held open with his forehead and his paws, standing as stiffly as a buttress. Master of his own strength, he remained patient. With his delicate busy tongue, Tibbet went on lapping the milk, with a sound as of little kisses. "Have you nearly finished?" said Reynard in the end. Said Tibbet. "Now? I can't hold it any longer." Said Tibbet again. If he had turned round, he would have seen the fox's eyes glittering in the moonlight. Perhaps he perceived their brilliance, for he did turn round, so quickly that he almost took Reynard by surprise. But on the contrary, the fox had just time to brace his back firmly, lift the lid as high as he could, let it fall suddenly, and lean on it with all his weight. At this moment, Tibbet jumped. He uttered a terrible cry and rushed into a corner, his back arched and his hair standing on end. "I warned you," said Reynard. "Not too much damage?" And he clenched his teeth in order to suppress the peals of laughter which ran up his throat into his mouth, as he saw on Tibbet's hindquarters a ridiculous stump, the remaining third of his tail, from which came drops of rosy red blood. "That makes 3, he thought, listening to the sounds within the house. For when Tibbet shrieked, there was a great bustle on the other side of the wall. A line of golden light from a candle showed under the door. The cat jumped up to the window and turned round, his eyes blazing, before leaping out.
"Traitor! At least you're caught now. I hope Constance and his wife break your back this time."
"Amen," laughed the fox, just as the door opened. The farmer and his wife appeared in their nightgowns. Reynard leapt between them, knocked Constant and his candle over, nipped Bronwyn's rounded buttocks as he passed by, and sped, as though on wings, out through the open window into the warm June night.